Hey guys, welcome back to the Outdoor Navigator. So starting with this episode, I'm going to start a series called Let's Talk Fishing Kayaks. And that's what we're going to do today. First thing we need to talk about is what to consider when buying one. So let's go! Alright guys, so we're going to talk about buying a fishing kayak. Well, I'm sitting here at the Outdoor Navigator studio in quarantine. I've got dang COVID and it's killing me. I'm stuck inside, but I've been told to stay in my cubby hole and not get everybody else infected. So I was going to talk about something I really love, and that's kayak fishing. So today we're going to talk about what to consider when you buy one. So I've been kayak fishing for over 10 years, and that's what I primarily do now. I have found kayak fishing to be very enjoyable. I mean, I love it because if I'm not catching fish, I put my pole away and then I just, hey, start to paddle and I enjoy the scenery around me. All right, so we've established that I like kayak fishing, and apparently you must be thinking about it. So let's start talking about what we need to consider so we can get you one. Let's move to consideration number one. All right, so basically there's two different types of kayaks. Okay, you got a sit on and a sit in. Okay, a sit on, you sit on top of it. Sit in, you sit down inside of it. Now, personally, I'm a fan of the sit on, but I am not a hater of the sit in. I just prefer the sit on over the other one, and that's what we're here to try to do today, is figure out what's going to work best for us. So let's start out with sit on. Okay, so the reason why I like a sit on is because of my back. Okay, now I spent some time in the military in the light infantry, and I can tell you right now there wasn't anything light about it. Okay, I got to carry a lot of heavy stuff over long distance, and my back is none the better for it. Okay, so I knew that I was not going to be able to sit down inside something all day, not be able to stand up. I just knew that that was going to be rough on my back. So, pretty quick, I knew that I was going to have a sit on kayak. So let's check out a couple of them. All right, so, you've got your basic models, okay, like this one here. This is a feel-free kayak. None of the kayaks that I'm going to show you today, I'm not sponsored by any of them. Just kind of showing you kind of some different options that you got. So anyway, this kayak here, this is a sit on top. Okay, so you're sitting on top of it. You're not underneath anything. This one here, you can see it's kind of got a low seat sitting in it. This is kind of a real basic kayak, kind of small. Probably doesn't weigh too much. Probably isn't the most stable. Probably not good for standing up in. But, probably good for creeks and small waterways. It's even got this little, I don't know if you can see this little wheel in the keel. That's something cool that Feel Free has. So, when you pull this out of the water and you're taking it back to your vehicle, you got this little wheel you can lift up and it'll help you out. It'll roll with the kayak. So, pretty cool. So that's one sit on. All right, now this is sit on that I have. Okay, this is made by Native Watercraft. It's the Slayer Propel 10. Okay, this one here is another one. You're sitting on top of it. Okay, you've got what's called scupper holes inside this. Okay, where water will drain out. So later we're going to talk about what kind of water we're going to fish in. But if you've got the chance of maybe water coming up over top of the boat, you can pull these out and the water will drain right out of it. Okay, whereas if you're sitting down in one, you don't have that option. Okay, you'd have to use a bilge pump or something. Another thing I like here, if you look, you see this seat. Okay, this seat here that sets up high, that allows you to have your legs out here and bend at the knees. You're able to bend those. And this is a really stable kayak. Okay, this one here is 34 inches wide. Generally, as you get wider, you get better stability in a kayak. That's good. That's good for me because I can stand up. If you don't have the good sea legs, okay, this other kayak that we looked at a little bit earlier, you sit down in it, you keep that center of gravity a little bit lower, so that way you have less chance of tipping it. Now, another thing I like about the sit on tops, You see here back behind the seat, okay, in this area, this is where you can store tackle. Okay, so a lot of people you'll see, they'll have like a milk crate back there. They'll have all their tackle in it. If you were going to go camping or something like that, you could put your pack back there. You know, there's a bunch of different options. I mean, I've got another kayak I have, and if you look up in the card, I've got a Bass Pro Shop Ascend kayak. Okay, and it's got a lot of deck space. Okay, so you can store a lot of stuff. So, if you think, you're going to fish and going to camp, you might prefer to sit on top because you got more area on top of it to store things in. All right, so sit on top. The reason why I like them, I feel like they're a little bit more stable, at least the one that I have. I like the stability. I like the fact that they drain off water better. Okay, they don't hold water. I like the fact that you can get an option where you got a seat that sets up a little bit higher. Okay, makes it a little bit more comfortable. And that's some of the reasons why I like it. Now, a con, generally these are probably a little bit heavier than a sit-in kayak. The comfort is going to outweigh that for me because I don't plan on packing one anyway. So let's move on to sit in. All right, guys, let's talk sit in. So number one, okay, let me make this clear. I am not a hater of the sit in. Okay, I have fished out of them before, but they just don't work for me. And you want to get one that works for you, and that's the most important thing. So I'll start out by saying there are benefits to a sit in. Okay, number one, the maneuverability is so much better, okay? Because when you're sitting down in there and you're closer to the water and you can use your body to help turn that boat. So if you're going to be fishing in some water where maybe you got some rapids and you have to maneuver that boat a little bit better, that's going to be good for you, okay? Maybe you got to pack that boat a little ways. Generally, they're a little bit lighter, okay? So, they do have their benefits. A lot of times they'll have a skirt in them, and that'll keep that water from getting down inside there and keep you a little bit warmer, because when you're sitting up on top of a boat, your bottom half is exposed to all the elements. I do feel like they're a little bit easier to paddle, okay, because you're right down by the water. I feel like you got a better push with your paddle. You got better control. You can paddle a lot more aggressively, in a sit-in kayak. And, a lot of times when I go fishing, amazingly, I don't catch any fish. Actually, it happens a lot. But, I like to just do some paddling. They've been around a long time, and that's what people used to do with them more than anything, probably was paddle. So, yeah, paddling. Hey, when the fish ain't biting, take you a good paddle. Now, here in a minute, we're going to talk about some other options. And, you might have seen it there a minute ago. So, like with my sit-on, I had another option for power, okay? I had the option of a pedal drive, okay? On sit-on kayaks, you can also mount motors on them and everything else. But now with the sit-ins, I have not seen that option. There is no pedal option because there's no hose in the bottom of the boat. I don't know that I've ever seen one. There may be one out there somewhere with some kind of trolling motor mount on it. I haven't really encountered that, but the sit on is maybe a little bit more upgradable when it comes to power options. Sit on, sit in. That's the first thing we got to decide. All right, so the second thing that I want to consider is, where am I going to be doing my fishing? Okay, am I going to be fishing in the ocean? Am I going to be fishing in a big lake? Am I going to be fishing in a pond? Am I going to be fishing in a river, a stream, a creek? Okay, I need to start thinking about that. I talked a little bit about that when we was talking about sit-in and sit-ons. How this figures in, okay, so if we're fishing in the ocean, we're probably going to want a boat that's pretty stable because we got a lot of wake. We got a lot of moving. The waves, the motion of the ocean. All right, so we may want one a little bit more stable, okay? We also may have a lot of water splashing up over top of the boat. So we want that water to drain off really easy. Okay, so I like the idea of that sitting on top of it with the scupper hose and the water just drains right out. So for ocean fishing, the sit on top may be the better choice. I would think so. All right, so let's say we're fishing a large lake. All right, well, we're going to be traveling a long ways. Okay, so we may want to consider some kind of motorized kayak. if I'm gonna be going a long ways, maybe I don't want to paddle or pedal. So I showed you the pedal. There's the pedal option, and I could tell you that's real good for going a ways. But after a while, that gets tiring too. There are other options. I mean, check this out. This one here is made by Old Town Sportsman Autopilot. This one actually has a trolling motor, and it's got spot lock technology. So, it uses GPS and all that cool magic to keep you in your spot while you're fishing. You don't even have to do anything. You just hold on to the pole and cast and catch fish, and it does all the other stuff for you. If you're going to be going a long ways, you might want that motorized options. Now, you've got some people that are traditionalists out there. They're like, man, I'm never going to do that. Well, yeah, that's fine. You don't have to. I'm just saying, maybe you have physical impairments, or maybe you just want to expand your range, and hey, whatever the reason, you don't owe me a reason, Just get what you want. I mean, that's the main thing. Get what you're good with. All right, now let's say we're going to fish rivers and streams. Maybe something that's got some shallow areas, some ripples and stuff like that, a lot of rocks. You may not want a boat that has a motor hanging out the bottom of it. All right, so when you look down here, you got this motor hanging out down here on the bottom. All right, so that's going to cause you some problems when you come into some rocks. You're going to have to worry about, raising that trolling motor up and down. And that's the same thing for like this pedal drive. Okay, when I'm fishing it and I come into the bank, I got to raise it up and down. So if I'm fishing in a creek that's pretty shallow and I've got a lot of rapids, that's not going to really work out for me. Now, with this boat, I can take this motor out. I don't even have to take it with me, and I can just fish out of it. But there may be a better option. So if you're going to do a lot of shallow water creek fishing, that's going to be primarily where you're going, okay? You may want to look at something more like this boat, okay? Where, it's pretty light. If I have to drag it through a ripple, I can. It's not real heavy. I don't have to worry at all about raising that motor up and down, okay? Because this one's powered with my paddles. This might be a better option for those creeks. Plus, it's easy to throw over the bank. It's easy to haul up the bank because it doesn't weigh it much. Just things to consider. What kind of fishing and where is this fishing you're going to be doing? Think about what kind of water that you're going to be fishing in. All right, so we're starting to narrow it down. So we started out, we're figuring out whether we want to sit on or sit in. All right, next thing we're talking about is where are we going to be fishing? Okay, what kind of water? That helps us figure out a little bit more. Now, let's move on to number 3. All right, so moving on to number 3. Where are we going to store this kayak after we select it? With that in mind, we have to consider what kind of space do we have, because that may affect what size kayak that we buy. So, I've seen kayaks, I've seen 4-footers for kids. I've actually owned a 16-foot tandem kayak. And with that in mind, you have to consider how much room you're going to have to store it. Now, as far as storage, there's wall mounts. I've seen hoist options. There's this one page that I watch. He's built some kind of contraption where it's an automatic pulley system that lifts it up above his vehicles in the garage. It's crazy, man. The ideas are out there. You just got to kind of go looking for them. But there's always the outside option. But remember, if you store it outside, one of the biggest destroyers of kayak, probably the biggest destroyer of kayaks, is the sun. Okay, so if you're storing it outside in the sun, those UV rays, they're going to cause those materials to deteriorate over time. They're going to become brittle. They're going to lose their color. Your kayak's going to flex and warp. So, you need to consider that. You may have to find some way to cover it up. Plus, there's always the threat of somebody stealing from you. So, something you got to think about is, where am I going to put this thing? All right, so next thing we need to start thinking about is, how am I going to get this thing to the lake? Okay, and that might even cost us more. By no means am I saying that you're going to have to buy a new vehicle to haul kayak, but you may have to get some accessories, okay, to properly transport one. Now, I've seen kayaks strapped and loaded to every vehicle that you can imagine. Okay, so there's a piece of equipment out there somewhere that you can buy to either mount with or haul with, or put in the back of your truck with. There's something out there. Somebody has thought of a solution to getting a boat on their vehicle so they can get it to the water and fish. I mean, you can't outsmart a fisherman, that's for sure. So keep in mind, it is your responsibility to properly transport your kayak from point A to point B. So, you want to make sure you have it tied down, fastened right. You don't want it flying out of your rig and causing an accident. You don't want it to come loose and be a road hazard for somebody that's traveling behind you. So that means you got to do your research and you got to buy the proper equipment necessary, okay, to transport it safely on your vehicle. Now, if you own a pickup truck, most of the time the kayak's going to fit in the back. You may not have to buy anything. Just open the tailgate and push it in, or I've seen people throw it over top of the tailgate. I've also seen a picture of somebody that had a boat over top of the tailgate and the sun hit it and it melted and was flopped over. I don't know if that's real or not. You may have seen that picture, but I mean, who knows? I personally don't like hauling mine that way. All right, so for those of you that are going to haul it in the back of your truck, if it's a real long kayak, there are bed extenders that you can buy, okay, that will support that. Also, on the end of the boat, you'll probably want to put an orange flag or something. Sometimes it's required by law, so the people behind you will be aware that something's sticking out past the back of your vehicle. All right, so now if you've got a car, okay, there's a lot of car topper options. Be sure to check the owner's manual, okay, to see what kind of weight your car will support. And just be aware that it will require you to lift the kayak on top of your car. So if you're not physically capable of that with the kayak you buy, if it's too heavy, you don't want to do that because you don't want to put yourself in a spot, don't want to hurt yourself and you don't want to damage your vehicle. So these are things you got to start thinking about. Weight, it may be an issue unless you have a partner. Maybe you get somebody to help you. Maybe that's the solution you got. Okay, you don't want to drop it while you're loading the car. I know a guy that me and him both bought a big old 16-foot tandem kayak, and the first day I met him at the lake, when he showed up, I seen this big old dent in the side of his car. I was like, man, what happened? He goes, yeah, man, it slipped on me when I was putting on the car. He didn't have any help, and I mean, it was heavy, and it messed up his car. And I mean, I felt so bad for him, first day out trying to go fishing, that happened to him. So another option for trucks, SUVs, and maybe even a car is the trailer option. This, of course, adds to the expense, but, it can be a great option, especially if you're hauling multiple boats. If you look here, that's how I've got one of my trailers rigged up so I can haul, I can actually haul 3 on it. So, the whole family, we can go. Just work on your backing skills. You might want to invest in some security locks to make sure someone doesn't take off with it. All right, so the next consideration we're going to look at is the specs and features. Now, first specification we'll look at is width. Now, typically, a wider kayak is going to be more stable. Okay, the wider, the more stability you're going to have. You've got a wider base in the water, just like if you were standing and you spread your feet out, you got that wider base, you got better balance. Now, the shape of the hull also is going to contribute to that. A wider kayak is typically a lot slower. I've had some wide kayaks that were like paddling a barge. I mean, because, you've got more contact with the water, so you got more drag, so it's going to be harder to paddle. Okay, a lot of times the wider kayaks, they do not track as well. So when you're moving, when you're underway, under power, it's harder to keep them in that straight line. You have to make more adjustments with your paddle or with a rudder control. All right, so length, a shorter kayak will turn quicker. Okay, so you see those sit-in kayaks, those little shorties that you see people going down through them rapids. So I've got a 10-footer, which is my pedal drive. Now, it does not turn as well when I'm actually using a paddle as the 12-foot Ascend kayak that I have. Okay, it tracks a lot better, and it's still not really good. There's ones better than it because it's a little bit wider. There's skinnier ones. You see these wood kayaks, real skinny wood kayaks that are just made for traveling. Those things are awesome, man. I mean, you can really get some speed, some distance, and they're easy to track. They track really well, so they're good traveling kayaks. All right, so weight. All right, we got to think about what kind of muscle we got. Because you're going to have to lift that thing. You're going to have to move it. So, are you going to be able to? Or are you going to have somebody to help you?
And are there good grips on it? So I've got kayaks that got grips all around it, grip points everywhere. I've got them in the front, the back, on the side. Now the Ascend kayak I have, the one thing that I can't stand about it is it doesn't have anywhere to get a hold of it. You can get a hold of it in the front and the back, but if you're handling it by yourself, there's no grips in the center part of it. I hate that. I hate that about it. I mean, I think I could probably add some. I haven't yet, but, Ascend, you need to fix that. All right, so construction. When you start thinking about what it's constructed of, that's going to come into play when you start thinking about where you're going to use it at, okay? What kind of abuse is it going to have to endure? Okay, that's going to make a big difference in what material is going to work best with the kind of water you're going to be in. So we'll hit this link. This take us to paddling.com. Let's check it out. And we're start talking about the construction. You've got wooden kayaks, and I mean, man, look at this thing. It's beautiful. It's a long kayak, relatively thin. It's a sit-in. I'm going to say that it moves really quick. Probably not going to want to stand up in it, but I bet it tracks really well. And I bet it really moves. Okay, the cons of a wooden kayak, though, they're a thing of beauty, like it says there, but if you're going to be navigating in areas where you got a lot of rapids and rocks, okay, this is not going to be the preferred kayak because you're going to bust your kayak up on those rocks. All right, so like a fiberglass kayak, hey, they're going to be fast and responsive, but, if you hit something, especially a rock or sharp object, it's not going to end well. It's going to cause a lot of damage, and it might cost you quite a bit to get fixed. Roto-molded kayaks, that's what I've got. These, you see a lot of them out there, okay? They're the basic polyethylene kayaks, okay? They're poured into a mold. All right, so these are going to be your most inexpensive kayak, more than likely, but they're also going to be heavy. These kayaks will take a lot more abuse than like the fiberglass or the wood kayaks. All right, and then down here on the bottom, you got the thermoform inflatables. I can imagine an inflatable, you may have some issues with it puncturing, something like that, but, it's all about what kind of water you're going to fish. It takes us all the way back to some of those first questions we started asking ourselves. All right, so after construction, now let's start thinking about storage. Are you going to need a kayak with a lot of storage? So I talked to you earlier, and I said typically the sit-on kayaks I felt like had a lot more storage area. A lot of times the sit-on kayaks back behind the seat, you'll have 2 built-in vertical rod holders, and then typically a lot of times you'll have one up front. Okay, so when you catch a fish, you can put your pole in there and you can start working on things. I don't like the vertical rod storage. I actually bought aftermarket horizontal rod storage, but the only reason I was able to do that was because on my boat, it was already retrofitted with gear tracks so I could mount things on it. So that's what you get to start thinking about. And now that kind of brings me to the next feature, which is upgrade capability. Okay. Will you be able to add to your kayak later? And you think about, well, what am I going to add to it? Well, get online and check out all the upgrade videos and the setup videos, and it's just going to blow your mind, the upgrades that you can do those. I've got 2 or 3 upgrade videos myself. And as you watch these videos, you talk to people and you do your research, you're going to find that there's all kinds of cool and useful gadgets that you can add to your kayak that's going to make your fishing experience that much better. You're going to find a lot of these boats have gear tracks on it, and that allows you to add things to it. You can add charts and graphs and rod holders and cup holders and camera mounts and cell phone holders and paddle holders and this, that, and the other. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, there's no end to how much money you can spend on a kayak. I know that. And that's legit. I mean, I have a flat wallet that speaks to that. Check out those specs, okay? Width, length, weight, construction, storage availability, and upgrade capability. Those are things that you need to consider when you start looking for this boat. So let's move to the next consideration. We're almost done. Dang it. So I was looking in my wallet. Reason why is because I've come to another consideration, and that's how much it's going to cost you. Apparently my wallet doesn't have no money in it, but hopefully yours does. But anyway, a lot of people would probably start out with cost as being their main consideration, but I think you have to look at all those other things first. you got to decide where you're going to fish at. That helps you decide what kind of boat you're going to get. You got to think about how you're going to transport it. That's money. You got to start thinking about where you're going to store it. That could be a money consideration. So all that stuff's going to help you make your decision on what kind of boat you want, and then that's going to affect your cost. Now, I will tell you this. There's the old theory, buy once, cry once. That's a good one. And I've done a lot of crying. Okay, you may not be able to afford that boat you want right now, but it may be worth waiting and saving a little bit so you can get the one you want. Because if you get the one that you don't want, you'll regret it, and you'll just spend all your time wishing you'd got something else. So when you buy one, you want to make sure that it's safe for you, number one. Okay, if you're a big guy, don't get you a little boat that you're going to tip over or sink. That's what I'm saying. Don't go too cheap, because you go too cheap and you may give up that safety part of it. Now, you may not be able to afford a Hobie. Maybe that's what you really want, but you might be able to find something that gets real close. The one that you can still put gadgets on, you can still put your fish finders, you can put your rod holders if you want horizontal, you can put a cup holder, you can put some of those luxury things on it. It don't have to be a Hobie. There's other boats out there a lot cheaper than Hobie that got them. But you may want it to be a little bit more stable. I mean, all that stuff costs a little bit more. Every time you get more stable, you get more light, it's always going to be more money. Sometimes, it's also brand name, but sometimes brand name means a whole lot. When it comes to that money consideration, I put it towards the end because first off, you got to figure out what you're looking for. You got to figure out how much you're going to be able to spend. And if you need to wait, I say wait. I say wait till you get the money to get what you want. But now, this brings me to my bonus, because sometimes you can find a deal. It don't always have to be brand new. So let's talk about the bonus consideration. What is it? Consider buying a used kayak. Bam. All right, now, used kayak. Used does not mean junk. I have owned quite a few kayaks. I mentioned that earlier. I've only had one brand new one, and the only reason I bought it brand new was because it was a deal I just couldn't turn down. But I've got some great used kayaks. I mean, they're out there, and I got what I wanted, and that's what I was telling you. You may want to wait if you want to buy a new one, or get out there and look for used ones. Now, when you go looking for used ones, there are people out there that will try to take you, but there's a lot of good people out there too. But you need to be an informed buyer. So I did do a video where I talked about considerations when buying a used kayak, but mainly what you want to do is you want to go out there and you want to check it out and make sure it works for you. Give it the once over. Don't be afraid to, tell that person you want to look at it, and you want to look at the bottom of it, you want to look all around it. Don't feel like you have to buy anything from anybody, because you don't. There's no obligation. So check it out, make sure it suits you. Think about all the things that we talked about before, the considerations of where you're gonna fish, and what kind of boat you're looking for, the stability and maneuverability and all that kind of stuff. So don't forget about all that when you're looking at it. Give it the once over, and who knows, maybe you can even say you want to take it for a test ride. They may be cool with that, especially if you've never been in a kayak before. You might want to try it out before that. That pretty much wraps it up for this episode. Now, those are all my considerations. Now, if you can think of any other ones, put them down in the comments. Hopefully, maybe it'll help somebody that reads them. If you got any questions, throw those in the comments. And I hope that if you are looking for a kayak, I hope this helps you out. Kayak fishing has been one of the greatest joys in my life, and if somebody else can go out there and experience that same thing, hey, then I'm doing my job, because that's what I want to do. I want to make getting outdoors easier for you. So it's been nice talking to you. If you're new to the channel, I encourage you to subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can see the other videos that I put out. Check out my playlist. I not only fish, I hike, I camp, I do all kinds of stuff. It's outdoors, I do it, because life is better when you navigate outdoors. And that's all I've got.
I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.